Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I would like to call the regular board meeting for June 16th to order.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So the next one is a board agenda approval. Can I have a motion for the board agenda? Thanks, fellas. And can I have a second, please?
A second.
Thanks, Sylvia. Can we have a roll call?
Trustee Lou,
Aye.
trustee Cunningham,
Aye.
trustee Vogel, trustee Leon,
Aye.
trustee Madhato.
Aye. Thank you. We are going to have a closed session after this. So is there any public comment for the closed session?
No, there are not.
Okay, so we will be adjourning for the closed session, then come back around 6 o'clock. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. We are back from the closed session, and to report from closed session, the CUSD Board of Education voted 5-0 to expel student number 0616-22A. Thank you. Let's go to superintendent's report.
All right, well, thank you. So I did want to take a couple minutes and as we're wrapping up the school year, have an opportunity to recognize 4 of our students from Miller Middle School. These 4 students were in Nicole Gasprick's 8th grade history class, and the month of April is our AAPI History Month, our Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders month of recognition. And these 4 students volunteered and stepped up and created videos, informative videos that were then showed in all second period classes. So the end of the year got away with us, and would love to just recognize these 4 students: Abigail Chen, Amelia Chi, Jerry Lee, and Ivani Tibraha. Actually, I have a certificate that I've created for them, and we'll get those sent out to their homes. But just wanted to give a big thank you. They did a tremendous job and really went above and beyond. And just always want to recognize our students that give that time and volunteer and give back to the rest of the students. So just wanted to share that this evening.
Thank you, Vincia. That's great, actually. And congratulations, students from Miller. Okay, so we'll go to the communication employee organization. Do we have anyone?
Yes, we do. We have either Adriana or Omar from SEIU. I'm not sure who will be speaking. If you could please raise your hand. Omar, go ahead.
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Let's give me 1 second. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Omar Beatrice. I'm a tradesman in the maintenance department. I'm a locksmith by trade, and I'm the vice president or the vice chairman for our SEIU chapter. And I'm here to speak on behalf of Adriana, who was not unable to make it, and I will be reading off her speech shortly. Good afternoon. My name is Adriana Arriola. I'm the chapter president for ACIU Local 521. I'm here speaking on behalf of our members. I'm a custodian at De Vargas, and I love my job. I love the work, my coworkers, and I do to keep this district a safe learning environment for the kids that we all love so much. However, I'm here to speak with you about my disappointment with the district's bargaining team to present us with proposals that show the same respect and dignity for our workers. For the past several years, the staff here at the district has been more than willing to be team players and accept low wages so that we could try to keep the district afloat. But enough is enough. We are living paycheck to paycheck and cannot afford to help this district keep us all at poverty wages. The bottom line is that this district has continued to ignore our bargaining group, which contains some of the lowest paid workers at this district. Our team is extremely disappointed that the district has refused to reclass these lowest paid workers, especially the cafeteria workers, and the district continues to ask more from these workers on a daily basis and cannot, excuse me, and cannot hire enough of them and continues to keep them at the lowest pay. And I also cannot ignore the fact that our essential workers, like custodians and cafeteria workers, were the ones who continued to go above and beyond for the district since day one of the pandemic. As the board who approves this management's raises, we are here to tell you that they are falling short. They are not doing the best job possible. Our team is available and willing to meet any day, even the weekend or evenings, and management has refused by saying they don't negotiate in the summer. It hasn't been done before. Something that is not precedent. Well, I'm sorry. We never said we don't work during a pandemic. So we think it's just fine if they work a little during the summer. Thank you for your time. Adriana Ariola.
Thanks, Aman.
Thank you.
And anybody else?
No.
Okay, thank you. So then we will go to the public comments. And as you all know that like we have limited the first 20 minutes during this segment for the public comments. If anything more than that, we'll resume once all the agenda items are over. This is for the public, this is for the comments, which is not in the agenda. So do we have any public comments?
Yes, we do. We have 4.
4. Okay, so you have 3 minutes each then. Yep.
Janet Oy, Lola Gonzalez, Raj Singh, and Yolanda Duran. If you could make your way to the podium or raise your hand if you're joining virtually. Go ahead.
Hello. Doesn't sound.
It's on. Okay. Hello. My name is Yolanda Duran, and I'm a bus driver and also on the SAIU negotiation team. I'm here to speak about several items. First, I'm very disappointed in how the district has been treating our members, especially cafeteria workers, custodians, and the bus drivers. These 3 departments have never been reclassified, ever. And the last time all 3 departments submitted an application, we all were denied because the district had no money, not because our applications didn't qualify. Therefore, our requests were valid, but were denied for reasons we couldn't control. If you can just take a look at the history of who has gotten reclassified, you will be able to see the disparity and also see that the district never reclassifies a large group. Please look into it. Another item has to do with the bus driver's manager. She wanted to attach the buses and the middays to the routes. The reason for wanting this is because the Max 2 vest does not fit all the buses. So I'm sorry. I don't understand that the district keeps on saying it doesn't have any money. But when we see the maintenance manager being able to use the district vehicle like its own personal car and lives near the east side, well, that gas starts to add up and on the district's dime. I was told that the manager needed to use it just in case he needed to come back for emergencies. Well, I asked, has anybody looked into seeing how many emergencies that manager has to come back for? And I believe that managers get gas allowances. So why does this particular manager get to use the district vehicle? As a bus driver, a few of us live 5 to 7 minutes away from the yard and have asked if we can take the bus home during our breaks, not even overnight. We have always been told it's a liability. Funny how I guess it doesn't apply to managers. I have made copies for all the board members to get an idea of what the bus drivers have been asking for. Something else that the bus drivers were asking for is to have 3-day notices to add students to our routes. The district actually came back to us with 0 days to add students to our routes. I believe that pupil services gets a certain amount of time to add the student to the district. And if student needs transportation, the forms get sent to the schedule and transportation. And I believe she also gets time to find a bus for the student. But the bus drivers don't deserve time to add them to our routes.
3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
Okay.
it. If you have anything, you can send us a mail as well.
Okay,
This is not-
my printer broke, so I only have one copy for everybody.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. The next person, please.
Lola, go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you, Lola.
Okay. Good evening, board members. I hope you can hear me because I'm talking from the car from Sacramento State College. My son had a orientation today, but I am also speaking on behalf of our SEIU team for all our members. I'm also on the SEIU team 521, and I'm also a union steward and representative for SNS. I've been with the SNS group for 29 years plus. In all the 29 years, we have never been reclassified at all. And we've never gotten a raise, just like the custodians and the bus drivers. I feel disappointed in this last year on how we've been meeting with management and how we've been treated. I feel we are not having the same respect as the CEA and CSEA. When the teachers came back to have school with the students, they had a pay increase. Well, when we had COVID 2 years ago, when this all started, all these SEIU and members of the school district were always getting in our cars, leaving our families at home and going to our job sites because we could not work from Zoom. We put our lives on the line and our families on the line because at the time there was no cure for this. And I had lost 2 family members to this. We put our life on the line for the district because we wanted to work for this district. I went to school in this district from kindergarten till I finished school. My kids went to school in this district from kindergarten till they finished. And I also had 2 grandchildren. This district used to give us a lot of respect, teachers and all the members. But I feel management has let us down in the last 5 years, especially when I also was on the team. That was when we put in our reclassification and all those reclassifications were denied. We are the lowest paying in food service, and we have always been there for the students and parents through COVID. And now that we have to we serve breakfast and lunch this coming year for free, which we love to do. We love to see the kids' faces when they receive their lunch. We get extra duties put on us that were never in our contract. We are the lowest paid in this county, but yet we.
Thank you, Lola.
Raj, go ahead.
Hey, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hello, CUSD board. So I co-admin the CUSD parents group on Nextdoor with other PTA leaders and CUSD committee members. Actually, before I jump into my comments, if you're not familiar, parents listening, Feel free to search for CUSD Parents on Nextdoor. We're 1,500 strong and growing. Parents exchange and share a lot of information. We do limit to those in the CUSD jurisdiction. It helps keep our polls authentic. Anyways, coming back to my comment, we recently ran a poll about term limits on the CUSD school board. Term limits historically have always had significant support across California, and our polls, although early, still show the same for a 2-term limit. In California, a number of school districts have been enacting term limits at school boards in recent years. Just last week, Glendale and SoCal, and it passed with 89% voting yes. More close to home, Palo Alto in the 2018 election passed with 75% voting yes. As someone who's been following the district closely for quite some time, I also recently served as the vice chair on the 7-11 committee. It's very obvious there's lots of different opinions within CUSD. The community is polarized in each in their own ways. Term limits, I believe, might be a great way to help bring some of the community together. So my sort of request or recommendation here is consideration to agendize in a future meeting the inclusion of potential term limits for the school board as a measure in the fall election. Thank you.
Thanks, Raj.
Janet Oy, are you in the audience or online? I don't see Janet.
Do you have any more?
I do not see Janet, and that was our last speaker.
Okay, thank you all. Then we'll move to the next item, the consent items. Can we have a motion for the consent item?
So moved.
Thanks, Jerry. And can we have a second, please? Thanks, Larry. Can we have a roll call vote? And then
Yes, sorry.
roll call.
Trustee Lou,
Aye.
Trustee Cunningham,
Aye.
Trustee Vogel, Trustee Leon,
Aye.
Trustee Madhato.
Thank you. Go to the information and presentation, the school update.
So we'll introduce this while Leslie go ahead and gets the microphone. So this will be, just a reminder, we only have one microphone. This is our kind of our wrap-up presentation on school updates of all of the work that Leslie and her team, all the transition groups that have been meeting throughout the year and planning. This is really that last final push as all the teachers are packing up and moving through their new schools, relocation. And so just wanted to share kind of an overview of the process throughout the year and then some recommendations that we have or considerations that we'd like to, as we move into next year, to continue to support our schools. So I'll turn over to Leslie.
Great. So first, I'm just the agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about the timeline until now. So the past 3 years worth of work that got us to this place today. Share some high level accomplishments and highlights, as you know, that I've shared them along the way, but some that we're excited to sort of, as we recap the year, some things that we want you to know or to remember, and then some ideas for as we move into the 22-23 school year. So as you're all aware, since 2019, and really even before that, with our community, with our board, we did a variety of things to outreach to the community. And what you'll notice in each of these spans of years is that, you know, there were numerous board presentations and community opportunities to be able to have discussions about our district finances, our enrollment trends, balancing enrollment and projections. And that'll be something that as we move forward, we will continue to engage in those conversations with the board as we will look at the ebbs and flows of enrollment across the district. When we started in 2019-20 and we began thinking about the likelihood of looking at school closures, we did, the board held listening sessions where all 25 sites had an opportunity to look at their enrollment trends. And it was really an opportunity for the board to hear what the community had to say about what their schools were experiencing and the impact of decisions that might have been on the horizon. In addition to that, we formed a Citizens Advisory Committee. At that point in time, it was established and formed in 2019 and 20. And it began regularly meeting in 2020, in the 2021 school year. Again, we came back and continued to have dialogue to look at finances, trends, et cetera. We had a state of the district where that was also highlighted. And then there were recommendations from our Citizens Advisory Committee to the Board of Education. When we began this school year, again, we reviewed where we were with enrollment trends, capacity, conditions of schools. We started looking even more deeply at the recommendations from CAC, but really site by site, what were the impacts? And if you remember that Erin created a dashboard where you would be able to click on the school site and read the data that helped us get to a place of ranking. The staff continued to have discussions with the board and lots of community input over the course of the 3 years. Once the decision was made in regards to school closures, we spent time working with the communities that would be affected, the closing school sites and the receiving school sites. And we formed a district advisory committee and then site advisory committees that helped us look at different levels of perspectives from a student perspective, a staff perspective, a community's perspective to make something that is hard and emotional for a community as seamless as possible, understanding the emotion around change at this on this large scale. So some of the things, although we know that school closures is really an emotional journey, some accomplishments, we were able to place 535 current Meyerholtz Muir Regnart students to receiving schools in the 2022-23 school year. All of those students were placed at the schools of their choice. Even after choices were made, up into a certain point, we were able to, when families would reach out and say, I've changed my mind, I think we need to do something different. Up until around May, we were able to accommodate all of those wishes just through a simple movement of students. At this point in time, if families moving into the district or families change their mind again, we will work with them through our open enrollment process, and they would certainly be given a priority on a campus within their region. Right now, we're at a place where we're really carefully monitoring enrollment. We do have overflow at some of our elementary school sites, but our goal will be to continue to work diligently to place students at the receiving school sites. In addition to that, we have placed 29 teachers, Meyerholtz, Muir, and Regnart teachers through the priority transfer process. HR worked really, really hard to go through multiple cycles of movement with staff. This does not include our CLIP teachers because that program moved with the program to the new, to the Muir campus. Our schools, I think, did an amazing amount of heavy lifting at the school sites. And I do want to acknowledge the work of anyone that was at a school organization where either they were closing or receiving, because it has truly been a Herculean task. But in addition to that, I couldn't have done the work that I did without the amazing principals at all of those sites. They worked collaboratively to make sure that tours were held, parent coffees were held, stakeholders were invited. They reached out to our community members that had questions about their school sites and I didn't hear from anyone that they felt that they were reaching out and not being heard or listened to by the school leaders, either at the closing school site or the receiving school site. So an amazing kudos to our instructional leaders at the school campuses. We just finished formalizing our plans for fall messaging. I think it was maybe it was last week, Nancy may have given you a sneak preview of the postcard that will be sent in the fall to all of our families. If not, we'll make sure that you get a copy of it. So the week before school was out, I did meet with the receiving school site principals and we finalized our plans for the welcoming activities on the school campuses. Our closing school sites, collaborated with our receiving school sites. And as you know, change is emotional for everyone. It was just as emotional for a school leader at a site where their site was going somewhere else, and how they shared the knowledge that they had about the communities that would be merging. And again, just an amazing job. Principals were gracious with their time, welcoming staff onto campuses, spending lots of time with them to make sure that they knew where they were going to be on campus. They were part of that decision-making process, had buy-in to the locations that they were going, and even to the school plan on where classrooms would be located on the campuses. And then our IT department and our communication department did an amazing job at finishing up our process, making sure that our website had what it needed to indicate with new families where addresses were now assigned to, so that new families coming in would be able to understand the choices that they had in regards to school locations, either what we named that default school, but also their other choice options for neighborhood schools. So the one thing that we want to have a little bit of input from the board on tonight is on the horizon. And this is something that Stacy has been talking about for quite some time, is really looking at forming an ongoing stakeholder task force for the purposes of looking at enrollment across the district and being our thought partner as we move forward and look at trends. So what we're envisioning is that we would have a task force that would review and study the enrollment trends and projections. As we look at boundaries or new developments or enrollment highs and lows, they would be in a group that we would be able to have a dialogue about or dialogue with before decisions are made or presented to the board. They would look at the data with us. They'd review our practices from enrollment, from an enrollment perspective. They could help us review our policies and regulations related to enrollment. And then they would be able to provide recommendations to the superintendent and CUSD board so that we can make decisions regarding enrollment that benefit the district. So this is our initial thinking about a task force that we would focus on as we launched the school year. And so some of the things that we just, before we finalize and formalize what this would look like, we'd love to be able to have the board help us think about, the timing. If we were to form this task force, we were thinking, does it make sense to begin forming the task force in the fall and then having the first meeting sometime in December? So that's a question for the group. We were anticipating this group would meet 4 times a year and wondering if that sounds reasonable. Is that enough? Do you think there's a need for more or less? And then in addition to that is, how would you think we should consider the formation of this task force? Do we look at our CAC, the last CAC that we held, that spent a lot of time digging into the data and has some foundational knowledge? Do we include that group in the formation of the task force and add to it to make sure that we have broad representation across the school district? Do we start fresh, which would then mean those individuals, if they wanted to continue to serve, they would go through an application process? And so I think for the purposes of tonight is just, those are some things that Stacy and I are thinking about. And through your discussion and dialogue, maybe you can shed some light on thoughts that you may have. And then we would bring back something in the fall in a more formalized manner to the group. Anything else to add, Stacy?
No, I think that's great. That the one piece that I would add is, as we're talking about the forming of the stakeholder task force, is really to have that sounding board. And we know that there's conversations out there in the community. Part of that process that evolved when we did determine to close and consolidate schools is we created flex boundaries in 2 of the schools that were affected. And, is that something that we could look at in the future as being broader throughout the district, as long as it keeps our enrollment balanced and it increases the options for parents to have choice? And so that would be one of the areas that this task force could take a look at and provide feedback and some recommendations for us as well.
Let's open up for some discussion or questions. This is more information, right? So,
Oh.
so who wants to start?
A point of order. So is this clarification or are we doing discussion? Is this under
This is information presentation.
Discussion's okay, right?
Information tends to bleed in discussion,
Right.
because really our intent here is we would like to hear feedback from the board, whether this is even, something that you're supporting, what would that look like so that we could continue and take all your feedback, and then we would come back in our next meeting and, probably solidify more of what this would look like and start the process.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You want to start then?
I need a moment to
Oh, okay.
organize my
So
notes.
who wants to start then? One of you start, please.
I have been starting the last 3 meetings. I would
Okay.
like to defer the start to someone else.
I'll go ahead and start.
Yeah, thanks,
I had
Robert.
15
That
seconds
was
here
good
to
wait time.
organize my All right. So I don't have any questions really. So just really feedback. So it's kind of going back when you're reviewing the work of the transition. I forget the name, the committees. What I would like to perhaps ask is if we could do a survey of the parents at these receiving schools, just to kind of get a better understanding of what the climate is, how things are working out. I think we've done a lot of preparation. It'd be good to kind of see how things are, so we could potentially take any sort of action to mitigate anything, or maybe just get great feedback. Everything works so well. So that's point number one. In terms of the enrollment committee, I think this is a great idea. So a couple of items. You talked about starting in December, and I wonder if it would be possible to start earlier and have the meetings actually happen throughout the school year, so that we have the recommendations from the committee before the end of the school year. I worry that if we, we start in December, we take a full calendar year, and then it might take a while to put into any sort of implementation, any sort of recommendations that come out of that. So I would request that maybe consider starting a bit earlier, having closer together, wrap up before the end of the school year. In terms of the number of meetings, 4 sounds reasonable, but I would just say we start with 4, and I actually would like to leave it up to the committee themselves, depending on the work they've identified on how many meetings they have. I also would like, so long list, yeah. I also would like to, well, I guess just in terms of the, flex zones, part of this process we went through, we have now these sort of flexible boundaries for some of the schools. I am in support of considering whether or not we want to do that throughout the entire district. That'll give us more tools to manage the different, say, enrollment trends of the different schools. So I would like to look at that. I know during the process, we had also looked at, we had talked about the notion of having attendance zones where you might have a single quadrant and you could go to any of the schools there. So I'm very open to other tools like that. The guiding principle for me would be to provide the district with more tools to balance enrollment, or however manage enrollment in the way that we think would best serve the students. Lastly, I would like to be maybe drill down a little bit on what are we solving for here. So I understand we're getting recommendations back, but I like to sort of be, how would I know if we were successful, right? What are the things I can imagine? Some of the things we're talking about right now, sort of declining enrollment at some of these other schools, some are changing different than others. So for me, that would be one of the things we're solving for. So in terms of when we task the committee with things to recommend, maybe we could do the next level of sort of thinking and come up with a couple of things. What are we solving for here? Is it financial? Is it enrollment? Is it staff preference? Whatever that is, if we could be a little bit more specific about that. So thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Who wants to go next?
All right, I'll go.
Okay.
So I have just one question and a comment. I can't remember if I asked last time, when you introduced the concept of the postcards, Leslie, if I raised that I loved the one that I got the sample of, and I'd love to see us do that for all of our schools. I think sort of and I don't know, I guess my question is, could we cost that out? Could we look at that? I mean, just from the standpoint of almost like a little welcome back to school. My kids loved getting mail.
Yeah.
I think it's a way to be, especially for our young ones, to be excited about the starting school year. If it's too cost prohibitive to do it for all of our grades, maybe it's a kindergarten welcome. I don't know what it is, but I think something that makes kids excited for the coming school year might be a really neat thing. And I love that we're doing it for our transitioning schools as a start. And I hope it is a start of something more, because I think it's a great idea. And then I actually would echo a lot of what Jerry said in the way that I'm answering the questions for consideration. I like the idea. I'm fine with starting the process in the fall. I'm fine with sort of the notion of if that leads us to a first meeting in December. I think where I have some similar thoughts to Jerry is I feel like there's enough out there that you might want to consider whether or not it makes sense to tighten up some meetings up front and do 3 or 4 in a row over the first couple months to get everybody up to speed and to open up some of these topics. And then if that committee decides that the work of the committee is more like an every other month or an every quarter thing, it could spread out over time. But it seems like we've got some continuing things that we could use some feedback from the community on, and that sort of having some more frequency to those initial meetings to kind of get everybody rolling and thinking about these things for the board would be good. And then the other thing in the formation question, I guess my answer to you when you said, what do you envision would be yes to both. Like, it would be great if there were some continuing members. It would also be great if there's an opportunity for an open invitation for people who are interested. I think what I learned coming out of the CAC process last time is I do think it's really important that we cast the net wide to community members that are in our schools now and community members who either have incoming students and or have been in our schools in the past. I think these schools belong to the entire community. I think the feedback that we get from the entire community is so valuable. And I think if we want our entire community to be invested in delivering on the promise of public education, then we need to, I would hate for us to only cast out through our school newsletters. I hope we can figure out some sort of way to communicate and invite broadly, and to then consider that in the formation of a task force. I think I've hit on all of them. Okay, so that's it for me. Thank you, Satish.
Thanks, Laurie.
Sylvia, you want to go next?
Sure. So overall, I like the idea of having the stakeholder task force on enrollment, and it, I'm sure it probably came from the model that the high school district has, because I know that they did that with their CAC when they were looking at enrollment at Limbrook specifically, and then it's become like a really good focus group for the superintendents, I think, at the high school district. And so I like that we kind of follow that model because we've seen it done well, and it's, the same community. So I'm definitely in favor of us doing something along that model. In terms of timing, I'm good with, forming the task force in the fall. Having the first meeting in December doesn't really, I don't think I feel strongly about it one way or the other. I do want to make sure that there's time to recruit maybe some of our newest parents, especially like if they're incoming kinders or folks that are more new to the community. And so just want to make sure that there's time allowed for that. Frequency of meetings, I'm in agreement with, I think, my colleagues in letting the group kind of determine what makes sense from a calendaring point of view. Formation, I think in terms of what to consider, I do like the idea of using some of our previous committee members, like CAC members or 7-Eleven committee members, folks that have already had some level of education or just knowledge in these different areas, whether that's enrollment or zoning or all of the different things that each of these committees did the work for. It would seem like a good use to continue that. I would love to see a good spread of representation. I think it will be hard to get it from every single school. So I don't think that's necessarily a realistic goal, but at least maybe if we look at the district in the quadrants to make sure that there's a good spread of representation from each of the quadrants. And, ideally to be able to get equal representation across everyone, but I know that isn't always possible. I think the other thing I would think about is how this group might be different from our PAC-DLAC group, which is kind of a parent rep from each school community and also kind of, serves as a sounding board in that way. So I'd want to get a little bit of maybe just distinguishing what the roles are. So, because I could imagine, some of the parents that are involved or active and leaders in their communities may look at these two different opportunities and be like, well, which one am I signing up for and what's the purpose and what's the role? And, or maybe how do the two interact with each other? What are their distinct roles? I think that's what I maybe would want to see some clarification on what that distinction is and how that would be messaged to folks as we're recruiting. Thanks.
Thanks, Sylvia.
I also support the idea of a task force. I think it's a great idea. I like the December start time because I think for those students that are switching schools, either because they're consolidating or because they're new to the district or because they've chosen a different school, I think it gives people a chance to sort of adapt to their new situation before they begin to think about the future. And also it allows us time to select the members of the committee. I think 4 times a year is good. And I think we might need more down the road. I believe we're going to be closing schools again in the not too distant future. And I think as we get close to decisions like that, we would want to increase the number of meetings. But I think I agree with Jerry's comment and others that the committee should decide. In terms of the composition of the committee, I agree with some continue and some new. I think that's a healthy way to do it. And on a little bit different topic, I'd like to +1 Lori's idea about the welcome email. Kids love our mail, US mail. Kids love to get mail. Thank you, Cindy.
Thanks, Phyllis. Okay, you made it so quick. So my thing, I think, I think I like any community engagement. Okay, that I like it. Okay, this is one of the definitely a priority. So anything, any task force with the enough representation from the community, I'll support that. No doubt in that. But I think the clarity and on the objective perspective, I think we have to be very, very clear. What is that this committee is going to recommend, right? So is it like a board appointed committee? Is it a superintendent committee? And what is that? So we had a purpose for CAC or a 7-11 committee. We had a purpose, right? A clear written or whatever it is, that objective is very clear. So no confusion on that. What is that end of their 4th session or 6th session? What is that expected? We were, it was defined well in advance. But here it is a little bit loose. I feel that so what is that? Like a study about these things and the trend and projection. So what is that? This is what the projection, this is the trend. And so are they going to recommend us something based on that thing? So that kind of, maybe it is too early to talk. This is your first thought on that, but I would like to expand it a little bit more and more crisp and clear objectives here, right? On the members of this formation is based on purely on this objective, what you're going to define, okay? It could be a mix of new and old or a completely new also, maybe, right? So because depends upon what is the real objective or the point objective here. I know the high level objectives we have put it, but what is that they're going to recommend it? And are we, again, like once they recommend, is it something like, is it something we listen or we are going to take an action on that? Or is there something tied up with that, right? So those kind of, clarity should be there. Pretty much, I think that's it. I think rest all the things were covered pretty by everybody. pretty much. And definitely, I like the, that a good talk about the, boundary areas, because that's been always, a topic. So we had to, that is good that we are reopening that, but definitely it should come back with some clarity on that side. Pretty much that's it. I have frequency. I'm really not bothered about in number of things. Means like I assume that the team will do a right job on number of times what they have to meet, depends upon the, the target or what the objective what they have. That's it I have. Do you want one more round before we go for public
I
comment?
don't have any other.
Okay, Laurie, anything on?
The only thing that dawned on me when I actually saw Mr. Lowenthal coming in the room is I've so enjoyed hearing from the committee chair. I think it would be great if you think about, as you're tightening up what the parameters are, if there's a role to bring committee members in to talk to the board. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. Do you need me to repeat anything? Are you okay? The whole thing. Sorry, Erin. All right, so I was saying that I looked across the room and saw the chair of our 7-Eleven committee here and how much I appreciated hearing directly from him and the group on several occasions, and that I found that very valuable, and that maybe one of the things we plan for with this committee would be some sort of interval where we could hear directly from committee members on sort of what they've been working on or chewing on or thinking on, or any ideas they have to share with the board, I think would be valuable.
Thanks, Laurie.
Yeah, and along the same lines, I think it's really valuable to have non-parents, some on that committee. I think that was a real asset in the 7-Eleven committee, to have some people who were parents, some people who were staff members, some people maybe had been parents, some people who had never been parents, whatever. But I think a good mix, as you said, a good mix of people is important as well.
Thanks for that. Okay, so if okay, then we'll go for a public comments if any.
There are no public comments on this item.
Thank you. So what is that action here? Like, what is that we are going to do? Like, are you going to present us?
So
back?
we do appreciate the feedback. I think it's super valuable. Leslie and I will take all of the feedback, and we will come forward with kind of a refined recommendation of what that task force would, and address some of the points that you brought up. So we would look forward to bringing that back probably at our next board meeting, which is the end of July or early August, so that we could get started on it.
Okay. Thank you. If you all are okay. Oh,
Can I make one more
yes,
comment?
please.
I think we all owe a huge thank you to us.
Oh, okay.
This is our last of the official school update processes and in this process. Thank you, and how valuable this has been for all of our students. This has really been a remarkable process to watch it come full circle. I really appreciate all the work, and I assume all of my colleagues do as well.
Absolutely. I think you did for all of us.
Yeah, really about it.
Okay. Any of you want to? Otherwise, can we move? Okay. We'll go to the next one. We have local indicator.
I will go ahead and turn this over to Ed Services, and I think Allison and Nick will be sharing.
Yes, thank you. So you might remember from past LCAP seasons that the local indicators are one piece of the LCAP process. And we've done this in a variety of ways over the years, but now there is a new requirement that we review the local indicators at the same meeting that you are asked to approve the LCAP. The local indicators happen throughout the year, and they're reflected in the LCAP document. So it's nothing new. It's just the new requirement that we want to make the presentation at this meeting. So we attached the very long document, and now we're going to go through the abbreviated document just to kind of go high level, and then we'll see what questions you have. And I'm thankful that I have Nick here, who is our expert on the checks and panorama climate aspect of this. So we're both here to answer your questions. So diving right in here to our abbreviated deck, you might remember that there are these state priorities, and there's this kind of overall model that helps us know how the LCAP is informed by different state metrics, but also the local indicators that come together as a set of metrics to inform our goal setting in the LCAP. And we can keep going. Each one of these is reflected as part of the California dashboard, and we get a rating each year. We've been meeting all of these every year because in order to meet them, we just need to complete the requirements and then enter the information in the dashboard and present it to you so we can keep going here. So we're doing that tonight, and we're continuing on our role of meeting the requirements each year. We can keep going. So just kind of at a high level, the first priority one is those basic services. And this is the area where we talk about teacher assignments as well as our facility audits. I noticed I accidentally left off the EL assignments. That's in the longer deck. It should have been right at the top there. So we had mostly zeros, but we had a couple of missed assignments this year, which were actually very minor. The vacant teacher one was part of our home study expansion, where we had a short time period where we had a sub in there while we were expanding. And then it just happened to be right at that point where we were doing the data collection. So it was resolved over the course of time. And we also had a teacher completing her EL requirements in one program that didn't quite transfer to another, and that was reflected here as well. So no major issues. We also conducted our facility audits that you've seen in other reports throughout the year. So going on to priority 2, this one is about academic standards and what we're doing in terms of next steps for instruction. So big ideas here are that we're continuing our work in science. We're going to take a deeper dive with ELD next year in the integrated way, as well as complete our history social science adoption. And we've been eagerly waiting for the world language framework and set of new materials to be coming. So that's up next on deck too. Moving on to priority 3, this is about positive learning environments and parent communication. We've always had a lot of very strong ratings in this area when we do surveys. It's always nice to see. And of course, we've made a lot of improvements to our communications thanks to Erin's hard work. Big themes going forward when we kind of take high level data and feedback. We know that people appreciate those clear, brief messages. And also our parents have expressed through the PAC and DLAC and through the parent liaisons that we should pay more attention to creating parent-to-parent networks, parents helping other parents kind of get involved in the system, learn about the system. So that's something we're going to be thinking about as well. In section 2 here on this, lots of great feedback on progress as well. Some of the areas that came up for working on next are thinking about supporting positive behavior, continuing our work in social emotional learning, and making sure parents have resources about how their children are doing academically as well as socially and emotionally. Also, our parents of English learners through PAC and DLAC have said, help us learn even more about how to know how the kids are doing in their progress towards proficiency and how we can best help at home. Going on to the next section, input for decision making. This is one that came up last year, and it's continues to be a goal. How do we just continue to reach out to our underrepresented groups? How do we help parents feel involved in decision making, both at the site level and the district level? It's kind of always one of those things we're striving for improvement in. And one of the things we're looking at is expanding the role of parent liaisons and helping them to continue to do their great work, but also help to be ambassadors of reaching out about things like our new ELOP program. Okay, moving on to priority 6. So this is school climate, where we're required to administer surveys. So we use Panorama as well as checks for this purpose. And high level on this is that, especially coming back from everything we've all been through, the notions of sense of belonging and connection continue to be really at the forefront for our kids. Making sure everybody feels a part of their school, feels connected to friends and staff at school. So that's kind of number 1 up on top for next year. And in those, when we see the data breakdown, we see, a lot of our focal students that we see in the academic data also show up in those areas as well. So we want to pay attention to that. Okay. going on. The next one is broad course of study, priority 7. We've been working on this. You've been talking a lot about middle schools. So we have our plan that's in process for a broad course of study across all middle schools. We've also been talking about art and music and boosting that up, as well as ensuring equity with our schools receiving Title I funding for areas such as the LMC hour. So this is something you've been talking quite a bit about, and we're able to put some of that into the summary here. And that was fast and high level. So we turn it back to you for whatever you'd like to know.
Thanks, Alison. Jerry, you have
I'll go first. Thank you. So first of all, thank you. So actually did try to read the LCAP document that comes later. It's hard to imagine a human or a group of humans actually put that together. A lot of information there. So a lot of work and a lot of details, and I really appreciate the data. So I want to just thank you and your team for that. I wanted to talk a bit about priority 6, about school climate. And so some of the numbers there jumped out at me, particularly the ones around connectedness, the ones around feeling safe, right? And some of these numbers, like I think it's 30% feeling like it matters. If we could go to that page, I think it's slide 22. Those numbers were a bit, I'll be honest, surprising to me. I guess. So that second one there, how connected are you to adults in your school? And so we're not going to solve this problem here, but I guess for me, I like to see if we could take this on as a goal. We set some number. I'll just say arbitrarily over 50%. I don't know what that is. And then part of this, I wonder, could we maybe, I think this is something Superintendent Yao I talked about in some of our pre-boards of having sort of these student advisory, in the same way we have district parent advisory committees, if we could have groups of students at the different schools and, hopefully they volunteer, because if you get appointed into something, you sit in there. But, I think there are kids that are probably think about these a lot more. And kind of what I like to get here is now we have a really great sort of a quantitative macro view over the overall picture. And I like to select a few of these for us to double click on to understand why do they feel this way? Or why do people feel, like not safe? Is it from other students? Is it from something else? Is it because of COVID? So that we can take action, right? Because I think these sort of kind of tell us where some of the areas to work on are, but I don't think there's enough information here for us to take action. So I guess that would be my ask out of all this, is some of these points around connectedness and safety. Okay.
Thank you. I'll just add that we're planning to have a focus on this when the principals come back for the principals advance and raise up a lot of exactly those things that you are pointing out, because we were concerned too. There's some things we can work on here, and we want all of our kids to feel happy and engaged and connected and supported at school. And we're probably going to need to talk to them to find out what's behind these numbers. That was our thought. So Nick, come on up here and you can add anything you'd like to.
No. First of all, I'd like to thank you for noticing that, right? That's something that needs to jump off the page to all of us. And I think we had a really good meeting with our team yesterday. And yeah, it should serve as a wake-up call, right? I think we returned this year really concerned about learning loss, but I think maybe we focused on academic learning loss a little too much. And we were too concerned about that and not so much the social learning loss that our students had. And in one slide there, you could see the connection between that positive relationship with an adult and that academic motivation, right? And so we kind of can't worry about the academics until we have those positive feelings and relationships with our kids and our, the kids and staff, but also kids and kids. And so that's going to, I think we could all go back in time and start over this year. I believe we would have spent a whole lot more time worrying about the social learning loss than the actual academic learning loss. And so it's, yeah, I thank you for, hopefully everyone noticed that, but thank you.
Thank
First
you.
person to go, so.
All right. Well, I'm glad we're all on the same page here. So thank you. Thanks for the insights. That's it.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry.
So actually, I will say that I actually flagged the same slide in my notes. And I think my questions were more about, I wanted to know if, and Alton, you mentioned a principal advance. I'm curious to know if maybe there isn't an advanced topic here for the board as well, to maybe understand a little bit more about some of the norming behind this data and how different or not our numbers are from sort of what's expected by the different age breakdowns. Clearly the way we're asking questions is a little bit different with our middle schoolers than with our elementary schoolers. And so I'd be curious to know kind of what our data set looks like in comparison to other panorama norms. And I also didn't want to specifically say it has to only be a panorama topic for our advance. It may be that this works into the work we're already going to be talking about with our middle schools and schedules. And I know in the prior conversations we've had, we've talked about whether or not there's some sort of room for, building in some sort of mentorship relationship or something like that. And maybe that's the advanced conversation we need to have. I don't know, but those were some of the things that I was thinking through with this particular slide. I also had a question in the deck about, I know at one point we were using the county project Cornerstone had a survey that at one point we were using. And at this point, I think we've moved away from that and we're only doing checks and panorama. And I'm wondering if one of the things that was in the Project Cornerstone survey when we were using it was sort of their foundation that they're built on did have a lot of connectedness with adults and connectedness with peers sort of built into it. And I'm wondering if going back and even just looking at their question pool, if we're sure we're asking all the questions we need to be asking to be probing that. And I think that has to do with what you were saying, Nick, about who's going to have the answers to those questions for us, it's the kids. And so maybe that's an area we can go back to, is look at some of the ways in which Cornerstone's connectedness segment, if there's different language we can pull from there, or different ways to maybe talk to some of the student advisories like Jerry was referencing. But anyway, that's what came to my mind when I was reading through this. And then I did want to ask, or I don't know, am I asking too many here?
No,
I'm okay.
I
All
think
right.
that need not come again. Yeah.
And then on the ratings for priority 2, it was calling out the different curricula changes. And I guess I'm not clear on, is just the new curriculum what's at the heart of that rating on the dashboard, or is it really more about adequacy is the wrong word, sort of meeting the needs in those different areas?
It's mainly about our teachers aware of the state standards, and did we provide them with instructional materials that are aligned to those standards, and then professional learning to support them. So that's the gist of that, but we can go beyond it. If there's something you would want us to highlight in the response, we can have the freedom to kind of go bigger if you'd like to see that.
I'll do a little more thinking and maybe circle back with you. All right. Thank you.
Thanks,
That's
Lori.
So I don't have any questions. I think just some comments as well, like the priority 2. I'm really excited that next year is going to be world language, and that's what you're going to be focusing on. Because I think that, we've got some great language programs at the middle schools with several different offerings of different languages. So I'm excited for that. The parent-to-parent engagement or parent-to-parent networks. I know that the PTA was already, was it PTA yet? That was already starting to create some sort of system to help parents connect to each other. So I'm sure that, using that or using Parent Square or whatever other platforms we have, I think that's a great idea, because I think parents, especially if they're new to the district, it's hard to, meet other parents, and everybody's busy. So it's a good way to do that. I support my colleague's idea of forming the student focus group. I think that's a great idea. It kind of reminds me of, I know we have the Where Everybody Belongs, the web program for our incoming sixth graders being done by the eighth graders. And I know that each of the middle schools does some really good programs with trying to bring inclusivity and that sense of belonging at each of the campuses. And so I think our students are the experts in that because they're the ones doing that work. So I love that. And then last one is, the intervention during the day, priority 7. I'm glad to see that that's going to really focus for next year. So yeah, great job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leah.
So my colleagues have made a lot of my comments. I won't repeat them, but I did have one on priority 1, and that had to do with facilities. I don't know if good is the best you can get, but good doesn't sound very good to me. Fair certainly doesn't. So my question is, could we, as we consider revisiting the master plan, could we take a look at whatever recommendations come out of this so that we can maybe reduce the master plan a little bit because it's so huge and so all consuming, and address some of these things, and maybe even as we look to a possible bond in the future. Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah,
fellas.
thank you.
I think pretty much everything is covered, but I think I have a question in general. The same thing I think we discussed last time too, every year, kind of like, this elementary grades have in the Panorama survey, in generally, it is higher in terms of percentage in their response, okay, or their positiveness, versus middle we see a significantly, the change is so high. Like I could see, for example, only 2 items here are like above 50%, right? I think, how is it compared to last year or previous years? Are we doing better there, or any specific action we are taking in the middle school part?
Yeah, so all of the schools are working on this in their SIPSAs and will be continuing to maintain a focus on that. We, saw pretty much flat or sometimes even some dips this year. And what we have been talking about in the principals meetings is that we were kind of resetting the baseline. This year we had higher percentage rates of participation because of course the kids were back at school. And so, I think with this assessment, we're trying to find where is our starting place this year and really understand what the needs are. So it is true that there's a difference in the elementary and middle school results. And part of that may be attributed to the fact that in elementary school, the kids are in their one class, right? So that you've got that kind of home-based feeling. And in middle school, they're developmentally at a different point and they're moving a lot. So our sites have been doing a lot of strong work in this area, and we need to keep going after everything everybody's been through in the last few years. So I think that our perspective has been that it's going to take some time to make some improvements. And we just need to keep that laser focus on this and give our principals a lot of time to collaborate and share what they are doing and what they're seeing, and really strengthen those teacher to teacher networks too. Because I know that everyone in our system wants the kids to feel good about being at school and wants the kids to feel supported. And it's sometimes hard to see when we don't see it in the numbers and we're just wishing for it. So I know everybody's hearts are there, and I wouldn't say we're seeing a lot of improvements yet, but I also think that's probably not that unexpected given, we started the year with distancing and the masks and, a lot of restrictions. So the togetherness feeling that we normally have on school campuses, it really hasn't been there in the same way that it has in other years. So it's going to take some time, I think.
What's the percentage participation in middle school on the survey? What's the percentage of participation, approximate percentage? Is it like a 60-70% of the kids are participating in the survey, or?
So
It's higher than that. This year we, on the 2 data points that were just on the screen was pretty high. If you took out the small number of families that chose to opt out of the survey, we had about almost a 90% response rate.
Oh, okay.
From 3rd to 8th grade, so pretty high response rate. I will just say one point, like this year, we don't really have year-to-year data yet on Panorama. It's kind of hit or miss during the pandemic, as it was a new tool. Oh, I'm sorry. So as far as like the historical comparison with Panorama, this was kind of like our first year. So we're trying to get our baseline, and the data that we got when we first implemented the tool last year during distance learning was kind of hit or miss. So we didn't have, as high a response rate. And then we also this year we added the sense of belonging metric. So that's also newer, like those questions and that area of the survey was new this year. So this year, the way we communicated with our site leaders were, let's get as high of a response rate as possible, kind of establishing those baselines so we know what we can pin down and work on, which Lori and Jerry alluded to, and then find those actionable items. I believe in the larger presentation, we did find historical data with the Czech survey, the California Healthy Kids Survey. So you can see pre-pandemic versus what we just did this year with our 8th graders. And you can see that drop, which is what, another thing I called out a lot around that relationship piece.
Thanks, I appreciate. Yeah, thanks.
I'm good.
You look like, okay. Like any public comment?
No, we do not.
Okay. Thank you. So what's the next year again? Like, is it it's only information, or we need to be filing something later?
It's just given to you as information so that you have that background as you consider the approval of the LCAP. That's the purpose. So
Okay.
nothing to do, just something to know.
Okay, thank you, Alison. Then let's move on to Williams uniform complaint.
So this is just an information item, and we are happy to present that there have been no complaints filed.
Okay. Any comments here? I think, yeah. Okay, I think fellas are okay, right? Any public comments?
No public
Okay,
comments.
yeah, thank you. Then we'll move on this. The next is call it CEQA.
All right, so I will kick this off, and then Chris will be joining in. Tonight, what we're bringing forward over the course of the last 2 years, as we've been having our discussions on school closures and identifying the schools, we have been working closely with our legal over the CEQA process, which would require environmental studies. And so throughout the process, we did follow the advice through legal process, and we followed the best practices for closing school. So we are now at a point where the schools had been identified for closure last fall. We are now looking at filing what is called a CEQA exemption under the class 14 under exemptions. What they really are looking at is the receptor sites where students are going to be transferred at. There's 2 considerations. One is, would these new receptor sites, with the new students enrolling at it, would it be over 25% of their capacity, or would it add 10 additional classrooms, and whichever is less would then trigger having to go through a CEQA environmental study. As we look at our numbers here, we can see that with all of our receptor sites, as new students are moving in, we are not anywhere near that 25% threshold. So we would not have any trigger to go into CEQA, and so we would file this with the county.
Okay. Thank you. Let's
And
open
so
up.
this is just information. Again, we know that throughout the last probably 12, 14 months, there has been some discussion as far as CEQA. What does that mean? I think the one piece that I would add is CEQA is not something that's done prior to school closures, because you really do identify the schools that are going to be closed, and then you go through that CEQA process. And so we had some of those final numbers as far as students transferring in receptor schools, so that we really did have accurate information when we brought forward our CEQA report that we aren't at that threshold.
Any questions, clarifications, or discussion?
Yeah, I'll just, so just to really be clear about what you shared in your report, Superintendent Yao, since I've heard some questions from folks about our CEQA exemption. So we made this determination that the closures are exempt from CEQA with help of legal counsel, and there's no any sort of red flags or anything. It's a clean CEQA exemption. That's the feedback we have from legal counsel.
That is the direction that our legal counsel has given us, yes.
Great. All right. Thank you. That's my only question. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I have none.
Okay, thanks.
Nothing from me.
Thank you. And this is the only that, like you said, that 25% or the 10 class, that is the only item in that, or there are multiple other?
That is it. That's what qualifies as an exemption from CEQA, is looking at those 2 components.
Okay. Thank you.
And so again, we will go ahead and file these with the county and close.
Yeah, so does it need an action later or no?
It does not. It just is coming as information to as a board. So that
You don't
because it
need an
has been a
action on this
conversation, But
later.
no action needed.
Okay. Okay. Any public comment here?
No, there are not.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Then we'll go to the next one, discussion item or long-term fiscal stability.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Chris and he'll get us started.
Good evening. I'm going to reintroduce Dale Scott. Dale wasn't able to attend our last meeting. We had a representative from Dale's company, and there was some information that the board requested staff to come back in regards to some of the current or the most recent ballot measures. So I know Dale has a slide here. He will share with you in regards to some of that research, and then we'll open up the conversation back to the discussion about any interest that the board has in regards to a consider a parcel tax or a geo bond measure. So Dale, can you come up?
Good evening.
Thank you.
So apologize for not being here at the last meeting. I was briefed on it. And I did spend a fair amount of time, however, with Mark, who I know you met, talking about this and looking through the data and then also looking at these recent elections. So I told you I was going to give you, when we started this process, I said I'd give you my opinion, how to proceed. I'm going to kind of try to wrap some things up the way I see it, and I'm certainly happy to take any other questions that you may have. So let's just go and look at these elections and some other data as well. This slide is all of the parcel tax and general obligation bond elections that were held in June, a few weeks ago, in the Bay Area. These are only the Bay Area elections. And these are put in order. The dark blue are parcel tax elections. The light blue are general obligation bond elections. The percentage on the y-axis is the percent is the yes vote. And it goes in order of the Republican registration in that district. And I think Republican registration is actually a pretty good indicator statewide of passage. It's not the only indicator, but it's a good place to start. And you can see you, Cupertino at 12%, you're kind of right in the middle. The dark gray is the one losing measure right now. Now the votes are not completely counted, but right now it's the only losing measure. So in other words, with the exception of Millbrae, which has more Republican voters than us, and there's obviously many other issues going on there than that. And I'm not trying to say that Republicans are bad or Republicans are good. I'm just using it as an indicator. Every issue on the June primary gubernatorial ballot in the Bay Area, be it a parcel tax or a general obligation bond, passed. Now that is pretty remarkable given the next slide I'm going to show you. This is voter turnout for Santa Clara County for the past 12 years. The dark blue is presidential, the light blue is presidential primary, the greenish color is the gubernatorial, and the lighter yellowish green is the gubernatorial primary. Gubernatorial primaries have the lowest turnout historically. And I did say that Republican registration is a great indicator of predictor of success. I would say turnout is a better indicator of success. So that makes it doubly interesting that all of these measures won, because you can see, you go all the way over to the right-hand side, June of 22. That's pretty close to the worst turnout there's been for the past 12 years in a gubernatorial primary. June 14 was a little worse. I've yet to meet anybody that can tell me who the candidates were. The Republican candidate was in June of 14 for governor, but don't Google it, but okay. So anyway, you can see it also bounces back. If you look at the gubernatorial elections, the darker yellow, there is a tendency to bounce that back after the primaries in terms of turnout. So if we can go to the next slide, now we'll hone in. There's just a couple more slides. This is the before and after for the bond measure. I want you to look at the after information. After information from the survey, we were at 66%. Remember that the margin of error was roughly 6%. I think it was 5.8, something like that. And so you're really talking about being still well over the 55% threshold for success, even if we knock this down by 6 points, down to 60%. Let's go to the next slide. For the parcel tax, you basically have just about the same. You're at a little bit more, 74%. But remember, we have a 6% margin of error, so you're down to 68%, and that's pretty much on the money in terms of, because it's a 67% requirement for passage of a parcel tax. So that one, even though it looks very robust, maybe it's not so robust. That one is a harder one to predict. And then the one other piece of information, which is not in this slide deck, is, and I think it was mentioned when Mark was here, if you look at the precincts in the Fremont, the precincts that were, and that has not changed. I thought that would change as more votes came in, but it has not changed. And those are a very large percentage of those precincts that voted against the Fremont bond are within this district. Now, there's lots of background on that. That's a district that has had 2 bond elections in the last 6 years, I think, for very, very large amounts. So a little unclear what's going on there. I wouldn't make that much of a stretch. But here is what my overall thinking is, and I'm happy to take any question. If you were going to do, remember we talked about there's 2 types of campaigns. There's an information-only campaign, and then there's the more advocacy campaign, which you can't run, has to be done by a third party. If you're going to go forward only with the general obligation bond on the November ballot, given everything I've shown you, given the survey results, given where I think turnout is going to be, and what I'm seeing happening in the state, which was a surprise to me that was that good, I think that could easily be run as an information-only campaign. You're way off you're way above the threshold. Certainly wouldn't hurt to do an advocacy campaign, but doing an information-only campaign, I think would work, and I'd be comfortable making that recommendation. The parcel tax, however, because you are that close in terms of that, let me put it this way. There's a reason why prior to Prop 39, the passage rate for general obligation bonds was roughly, statewide, was roughly 55%. It wasn't because suddenly everybody liked general obligation bonds. It's because the threshold dropped from 2/3 to 55%, and that is a long way. And so if you were going to go forward with a parcel tax, I really think you would have to run a campaign. You're just too close on it. It would be a tough one to lose, a tough one to run without advocacy, in my opinion. So that kind of holds if you put 2 on the ballot as well. You can't really have an information for one and advocacy for another at the same time. I don't think you might as well, if you're going to do one, you might as well do them as a one measure. So that's where I ended up in my thinking. I'm happy to answer any questions about that or answer any other questions or defend the comments if you wish, or whatever you'd like.
Thank you. So let's open up for the discussion. I think Jerry, it's your time.
All right. So first of all, thank you, Mr. Scott, for being here to help us make this decision here. 2 main questions. If we could go to slide 2, could you help me unpack what's the executive summary here? We have 16 data points, 15 of the measures passed. Are Republicans good or bad for? I don't know why you picked Republicans. I'm really curious. What should I be getting out of this slide?
What you should be getting is that even with a terrible turnout, and even regardless of what the Republican registration is, which statewide is a pretty good indicator of where a general obligation bond will land. Even in what is really a very difficult and low turnout election, it made no difference. That's the takeaway. It made no difference.
See,
The low turnout, they passed. The Republican districts did as well as I mean, these are not Republican districts, believe me.
right. No,
These are,
right.
I mean, by any stretch of the imagination.
Mhm.
But with higher Republican registration, didn't seem to make any difference. I mean, Kenwood ran a parcel tax election, got almost 80%.
All right. Okay. So then let me so this is a bear review. I want to talk a bit about our district. And you mentioned Fremont Union and sort of the results from Measure G. And so you mentioned one possible reason the numbers as close as it is well, they've had 2 bonds, so on and so forth. But I guess in my just looking at the data without having plotted it or anything, it looks like the south part of the district where our district is, there are very few precincts that were over 55%, whereas most of the ones sort of north of the freeway, they're up in the 60s. And so I would say that there seems to be a spatial correlation. It's not whatever issue it is, it's not just constant throughout that district. And so I wonder if this point, I'll just be blunt here, this is point to the fact that the voters in our district, for whatever reason, are less likely to support bond measures than maybe the ones that are further north in the northern part of the Fremont district. If you could comment a bit on that, because I just don't think it's something with the Fremont Union District if it's you see results on one side, results the other side, right? So to me, that's not. For me, I wouldn't say, oh, it's because any particular piece of attribute about the district, because we're seeing these differences, and to me, they seem pretty sizable. But I'm not an expert. You're the expert, so
Well,
I'd love to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, my thought is that honestly, I don't know.
Okay,
I mean,
that's fair.
I mean, I'm speculating,
Mhm.
but exogenous and endogenous variables are important in any election. So there's something going on. The fact that it's a high school district makes it a little tougher just to begin with. That's just the nature of the beast. Elementary districts tend to do better than high school districts, tend to do better. High school districts tend to do better than college districts. I mean, that's sort of the hierarchy. There is something going on there internally that I don't know about. Now, does that mean that you can take those results in that portion of the district and say that's what's going to happen to us? I don't think so, but it does give you some concern. So that's odd. I mean, that's an odd one that there's that concentration, and what the demographic differences are in those 2 areas, I don't know.
Okay.
So but I'm willing to bet that it was a result of different demographics and possibly different attitudes about what kind of job the district was doing.
That's fair. All right. Maybe just one more. You talked about an information campaign. So what would that look like? Would that be the district simply sending out factual information about, and that's it? And there's not really a sort of a, FPPC campaign committee associated with it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
Generally,
right.
we just put it on the ballot and send out information and that's it, and leave it to whatever.
Yeah, although I will say that the sending out of information can be a lot broader than just, quote, sending out information. There's public talks, there's public forums, there's electronic forums, there's all the social media forums. So you have a lot of tools in the shed that you can use on that, as long as it's fair and is not advocating one way or the other.
Great. All right. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Scott. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. Laurie.
We're doing just questions right now?
Yeah, I think so. Yes. Since the comments can be made probably later also.
I don't have any specific questions. Thank you very much
Okay.
for the updated info, but I'm good on questions.
Okay, thanks. Any Sylvia, any questions?
So I think my question has to do with the lean yes category. How is that measured? How is that determined, and what does that actually mean in terms of when it comes down to circling that dot on the paper?
Are you a strong yes or a lean yes? That's what it comes down to. When the person is either filling out the form or the person's being asked the question, they say, I'm a yes vote. How would you characterize that yes vote? Is that a leaning yes or a yes, yes? So it's a way of just trying to kind of get a sense, if you look at this, it's trying to get a sense, well, you've got 21% hard no. It's pretty hard no, and that's consistent. And if you look through those surveys and you flip through the pages, you see that doesn't move much one way or the other. The yes moves, the hard yes moves quite a bit depending on what project you're talking about and what type of election you're talking about. So it's just a way of trying to get some gradation in what that person is feeling.
So in your polling, maybe not specifically with our district, but with other school districts that you've worked with, do you ever look to see if that lean yes translates to a real yes later?
Yes, and it does. And when we look at the comparison of what did the poll show and what were the results, we're taking the yes vote and the lean yes together and comparing it to the results.
Okay. And is there, so I guess I know that it's just a phone survey and you're just kind of asking, is it a yes, is it a lean yes, or is it, but I guess what I'm trying to understand is how do we know what will turn a lean yes into a yes or a lean yes into a don't know or the other direction? And are there indicators that have been included in that?
Yes. I mean, that was the essence of the survey. So for example, I'm on the Geo Bond survey. If you knew that many of the projects would qualify for state matching funds, the more likely that would make more likely to vote was 70%. And there was a very small, I'd be leaning more.
I see.
And
So
it's
depending on
these
the
types
wording
of
of the,
projects,
I see.
that's what we're looking for as we're kind of walking down this. And if you start looking down the list, that yes begins to move over and the no everything begins to shift.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks.
I don't have any questions, but I do want to thank you for giving us your opinion about how heavy a lift it's going to be to do the geo bond or the parcel tax. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Wallace. I have a question on in generally. Okay, so we are clearly seeing two different percentage on bond versus parcel tax. Is it the same set of people you are taking the survey from, or is it two different set of people? Why there is a yes 60% for parcel versus a 46% for geo bond?
First of all, no, it's not the same people. It's different people. Different people. And I don't think they're as far apart as you think. I think they're actually pretty close when you get to the end results. But you can pick. There's many different tables in here we can look at. However, to your immediate question, which is why? Why is there a difference? Because apparently the voters in your community value investment in programs over investments in facilities. I mean, that's the conclusion I think you have to reach if there's that much of a difference.
I see. Because I don't think they're close, right, Scott? Like it is like, for example, yes, here is 46% versus 60%. I'm not talking lean yes. Without lean yes itself, there's about a 14% difference in the yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm missing your question.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what page you're on.
I'm just going through these slides.
Okay.
Right? You have only two, actually, this and the previous one.
Okay.
Right? 46, or the next one, sorry. This and the next one, if you see it. After information, if you take it, in the parcel side, it is
Okay,
60%
so-
versus the bond, it is 46%.
Okay, so we look at this one, and again, remember we add them together, and let's look at the after information. That's
Correct.
all
And
right. Go
yeah,
to the next
go
slide.
back. Go back, please.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is
64%. I don't think in a survey where there's a 6% margin of error either direction, that seems pretty close to me.
Okay.
Yeah, 5.8%.
Okay, yeah, I think that's all I have.
If I could ask a follow-up. So Mr. Scott, you said something about, so what these two slides say to you, so voters prefer investing in programs over facilities.
No,
Oh.
I'm sorry if I was missing. I thought the question was, why would you see, not
Oh,
absence.
okay.
Why would you see that people would do one or over the other? What would that tell you?
Oh, I see, I
I
see.
say, well, that would tell me that not that this.
Not this particular one.
Correct,
Okay, thank you.
correct.
All right, maybe a question for staff. For these the two values of bonds we're looking at, what's the rate for $1,000 valuation? What does that work out to be? Do we have that number roughly for the
What would be-
236?
What would be the tax rate?
Yeah,
Well,
how much would it be for?
yeah, let me just read it to you. So for the bond, that would be $30 per $100,000 of assessed
$30
value.
per
Oh,
100,
oh,
okay.
right.
And the other would be 60-ish, I guess.
I'm sorry?
The other, I presume, would be 60 since it's about twice as much roughly.
No.
No.
No, the other is not based, parcel taxes are not based on.
No, I'm
assessed
sorry, I meant
valuation.
On the two bonds.
the two different.
Oh, I'm
bonds.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood you.
There, sorry. about that.
I can get that to you quickly here. Hmm. Correct,
Right,
correct. The smaller one is $22
Uh-huh.
and the larger one is $30.
22 and 30. Okay, great. Thank you. That was my follow-up. Thank you.
Okay,
I'm sorry,
thanks.
could you repeat that again? 22
30
and 30.
per $100,000.
Do you have any clarification? Just any clarifying? Anything more? Or should we go for discussion?
I do have one clarifying question. Can the 436 versus the 280? Can both of those be structured in such a way that it's that concept of a renewal you talked about, where it's not, where we time the sale of those bonds to be with sunsetting
No,
prior bonds? No, only the smaller amount can be timed such that, okay. Thank you.
well, I mean, yeah, I mean, you could, but you wouldn't be able to spend the rest of the 400 million for, 30 or 40
Right, you'd
years.
lose
but-
so much from escalation and everything else that it would reduce the,
Yeah, so there'd be no reason to do that. So
got it.
and
Okay.
apples and apples, no.
Yeah, okay, one question I'll ask. In your view, if the amount proposed, like for example, here it's 436 million, if it is a lower amount, much lower, let's say, I know people typically do not go for very low, let's say, but 150 or 100 million or something like that, do you think that there would be a significant difference in yes and no from your experience?
Well, my experience in this district are very different things. I mean, every different district is different, obviously, but the question when we were asked in the poll about the dollar amount did not seem to drive. In fact, the larger one was higher.
well, yeah.
So I do not think that in general, I'll go broader. In general, most voters don't really understand, rightly so, what the dollar amount of the bond means. Should it be 100 million? Should it be 500 million? I don't know. They look at the tax rate, if that's whether they're concerned. If their concern is what's it going to cost me, and that's not every voter's concern, but if it is, then they're going to look at the tax rate, not the dollar amount.
Okay, so for example,
typically.
yeah, in this case, like say for $1 million, it will come roughly about $300, let's say. So if it is half or quarter of that, this could be even much lower, right? That's what I was trying to, the tax rate.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So you wouldn't expect a significant change in terms of yes or no?
I didn't see it in this survey. I did not see it, which was different.
Thanks. Any questions? Okay, so what's the next step here? We, as a board, let's do we want to discuss this or?
We should, since it's the last meeting of the school year, but do we want to listen to public comments or do we?
Yeah, we can do that. Or what do you all think?
We
Should
should.
we take a public comment first before going for the
Fine with
discussion?
me.
Yep. Okay, or so anything, Lori, you have a different
To
opinion?
go on.
Yeah, anything. I think you wanted to put some comments, right? Before,
Well, I mean, I do wonder if we want to look at the board consideration slide and talk amongst ourselves before, and then hear from the public and then continue our conversation.
No,
'cause that
I'm-
would be what our normal
yeah, I'm
practice
okay
would
for,
be, but, I think it's in the second set of
The last
Last
slide on
slide.
this one.
which,
but I mean, if you guys want to just go straight to public comment first, that's fine too.
I'm happy to share where I am. It's pretty short. I think right now, not feeling as comfortable about the parcel tax as I may have been, partly because of the G results. And I think partly, and be interested in your thoughts on this, Mr. Scott, is that this area, the economy is very heavily based on tech, right? And so tech is sort of going through, let's just say that the cheap money isn't flowing into it the way it used to. Interest rates are high. When Mark was here last time, he talked to us about people are sensitive to the price of gasoline. And so so from a parcel tax standpoint, I think given where we were in the previous elections, that seems like a steep hill to climb. So and then bond, I'm really torn. I think we certainly have facility needs. There are some things we can only do really with bond that's not really feasible with general money out of our general fund. But at the same time, there is, I think, honestly, the results from G give me pause. The fact that the areas, the precincts in our district are different than, I'll just say, some of the other ones. And I do wonder if there are dynamics here that's maybe specific to our district. So I like to noodle on that a bit. And I also would like to understand sort of the staff recommendations of the kinds of projects we would put on, what we do for a geo bond. But I think right now for me, what the sort of the guess of what the economy is going to be like 4 months out when the voters get the ballot, and also just sort of their attitudes, right? So I'm sort of asking myself just what those would be. So maybe I'll just leave that there. Guess it wasn't so short after all, Lori. Sorry.
No, so you're a no on the first one and a no on the second one and a no on the third one. Is that what you're saying?
No on the first one. I'm noodling. I guess I sort of lumped the two. I think I agree with Mr. Scott. I'm not sure people really, 280, 486. I think if people are yes on 280, they're not going to become no just because of that. So I kind of lumped them together. And I'm really just have really concerns about the G results. I expected them to be much higher, given how popular FHSD bonds have been in the past. I'll just leave it there. Yeah.
So I'm going to start off by saying what I think we need, and then I'm going to talk about sort of where I think we're at. I actually think we need to place a parcel tax extension on the November 8th ballot from the standpoint of even as we're moving into basic aid and we may be able to better now stabilize our funding for sort of our core academics, I think we continue to have needs around our arts and our music, our electives, some of those things that we hear about all the time from the community or from parents, that they would like out of a more holistic offering to our students. And a lot of what's in our strategic plan around whole child learning. So, from that standpoint, would renewing a parcel tax go a long way to help us meet those needs? Absolutely. Do I think it's what parents have asked us for? Absolutely. Do I think it's something that the community would support? I'm much less sure about. Given that where the polling is at is sort of on the cusp, and hearing from our expert about, the kind of advocacy campaign that it would take. I think the thing we haven't really touched on tonight is organized opposition, which I think there would almost certainly be. I'm not even sure with advocacy that we would have the ability to mount against that. And especially with where the polling is showing sort of on the cusp. So I think it's a shame, frankly, that we're not in a position to be successful with a parcel tax measure. And the only way to really know that would be to try. And I'm not sure that there will be support enough to get that over the finish line. And so then my worry shifts to, would that harm the other thing that I think we have clear needs for too, which is the GO bond? And I guess, yeah, I do. And so my reason for saying that I probably wouldn't support at this point trying for a parcel tax has more to do with trying to keep our stating our needs around the GO bond as clean as possible, I guess, or with less opportunities for tear down, sort of spillover. So then when I think about the bond and about our facilities needs, I mean, clearly in our facilities master plan, we have needs that went through a very public process, had lots of input from staff, from the community, from parent leaders at the sites, from students, from us. And clearly we have lots and lots of needs. There were also some things on the facilities master plan that were wants. And I think if we just automatically say, we're going to move those to the bottom of the list and really just look at our needs, I think we have more identified needs than even this higher dollar amount here. And I am very aware of using the word needs really does mean that I think we could make a case for those needs to the community, and I think we can. I think we have real needs around our tech infrastructure at this point and how aging that system is. I think we have real needs around a safety assessment throughout the district. I think we have some real needs around some of the, facilities, permanent facilities needed on elementary schools, some event centers and creating some equity around event centers with our middle schools. And so I think even though it's maybe a higher lift to not do a straight up renewal with the $280 million amount, I guess I would be more in favor of the 436. But if where the consensus lands is for the 280 amount, then I would be interested in placing a GO bond on the November 8th ballot, but I will hear from my colleagues and obviously hear from the community some more. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, thanks, Laurie. Sylvia.
So I'm just going down the list. I think, and I said this at the last meeting, I think if we're given the opportunity to try to renew the parcel, I do think we should try and at least give our community a chance to decide whether or not they want to do it, especially given that the risk reward, the cost of it will be so small relative to doing it later on. The reality is our current parcel tax will expire next year. And with that, we're going to lose the 8 million that we rely on right now, that will be taken away from students. And so when I think about that, and I think about the thing that Mark said last week, that parcel extensions do pass at a 90% rate. And I know our district, is not going to necessarily follow all of the same statistics as the rest of the state, but at the same time, it just feels like if we have an opportunity to ask, I want to ask, and I know that we're moving into basic aid, and in that sense, do we need the money? But then at the same time, I look at all the other districts around us that are also basic aid and also have parcel taxes, because there's an expectation that the community wants to invest in their children and in their students. And so I don't think it's necessarily a matter of even with like some of the districts around us that have thousands of dollars more per student than we do, they still also ask for a parcel tax because they are asking for the community to just invest and help and build up those things. And with that additional investment, the things that we can continue to provide for our students, music, arts, expanding our electives, all of the programs, the clubs, the additional things that we can do. It feels like we're missing an opportunity if we pass on this. And so that's where I'm at for the parcel. With the bond, I think the reality is we need to fix our facilities. I think in light of everything that's happening across schools across the country, we need to focus on student safety. We need to get that done right away. And I know that we need a bond to do that. I think there's things that living in this age of pandemic, we need reliable Wi-Fi. We need reliable IT. And we've seen what it looks like when our teachers are scrambling to try to get their kids on Google Classroom or trying to broadcast to students at home while, talking to kids in the classroom. We need that infrastructure. So to me, that's not a matter of, I think we need it. With regard to the dollar amount, I think I don't have a strong sense yet, because I would like to, I'd echo Jerry's request to kind of get a punch list of some kind to see what that looks like and what exactly are the line item amounts that we would need. I think right now I'm probably leaning towards the smaller amount for the bond, just because again, as our enrollment is shifting, as who knows, how much longer pandemic's going to last, and what kind of flexibility we need to adapt our classrooms or adapt our sites. And maybe we just need to do something smaller right now, and then a couple of years later, reevaluate, see where we are, see where the world is, see how our schools are doing, and then, look again. So, that's kind of where I'm leaning right now, but I'd like to, before making a declaration on that, I want to see what the actual list is. So I think that's where I'm at.
Thank you.
So at this point, I'm a pretty firm no on the parcel tax. I think we have great difficulty passing it. And I think I know there's a small risk in terms of it's what, $131,000 or something to put it on the ballot. The bigger risk for me on the parcel tax is I think if we failed two, I think if we fail another one, the more often you fail, I think the more you increase your chances of continuing to fail. So that worries me. Even though I absolutely agree that we need the money. In terms of the bond, I'm definitely leaning toward a yes on the bond, the smaller amount. I would like for our bond to be focused on safety and security. I was just looking this week at the list of the number of school shootings that have occurred since the year 2000. It is incredible. And I don't think, I'm sure Uvalde said it'll never happen here. I don't think we can say that. So I would like to see us invest in some serious, I hate fences around schools, but I think fencing around schools, robust, what do I want to say, public address systems where you can, ways to lock doors internally. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but I think if our emphasis is on that and technology infrastructure, I think we have a shot at passing a geo bond. That's where I am.
Thanks for this. I think my view is, at least from the parcel perspective, it is same, right? I think last time itself I said very clearly, and I don't think there are a lot of sentimental changes happened. So especially last two we lost, and and probably another thing is like we are getting into basic aid now, and probably a wait and watch kind of things. How we are doing from the overall budget perspective could be a better than expected. If it happens, that would definitely help. On the bond perspective, again, I think we all are probably, I think one area is like, again, the safety, right? And probably does safety need such a big amount or not, right? So that's what I was asking Scott also, like in terms of if the amount is lower, what would be the what would have been the results kind of thing, right? So is the is the safety, like what is the amount what we are looking for, if at all, on the safety side, which you are going to focus as, because that's what probably the buzzword here now, or everybody is worried about, including me, is how we can improve the safety part. But if it is not a significant amount, would there be any possibility for us to generate that money within whatever we have itself, right? So and I don't think the same voters are going to vote again, like for parcel versus bond. Okay, I think their sentiment will be same. The results will be same. This is about my perspective on that.
So I'm not sure where you are. Are you?
No,
no on the
I'm not fully convinced you on the bond part of it. And
Oh, you're not?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not convinced on the bond, but I was thinking that, like, but safety definitely, that's what I was suggesting, that is there any way for us other than the bond, is if the amount is not significant, is there any way for us to generate or make it? Just putting a thought. I know if you're coming with 100 million, definitely we cannot, but if it is if it is just a fencing, for example, or a camera and things like that, I think that should not cost, if it is a 23 schools, it should not cost much. From a bigger amount perspective, it should be few single-digit millions. It shouldn't be more than that if it is just fencing around. And already we have few schools already has fencing now available, and not maybe majority of schools do not have it, and we may have to look into that. And definitely safety should be given priority, but should it be purely a bond dependent or not?
And I might, if I may add to that, I think that what would need to happen is really, as we use the term safety and security, what do we mean by that? Because, safety and security certainly includes fences. It includes a lot of our infrastructure for our technology to allow the communication to go internally into our school sites. It could be the security cameras. So I think we'd really need to vet out, when we talk about security, what do we mean by security?
Should be more
I
discussion.
think maybe just maybe echoing my own comment and what Sylvia had said. I guess I had expected at this meeting today, we would kind of get a sense of what are the kind of projects that would be on the GO bond, because I think that's for me, that's a huge part of making the case to the community. So I don't know if staff's ready to talk about that, even if we don't have slides on it, or maybe that's another meeting. Because otherwise we're kind of trying to decide to buy something, but I'm not sure what's in the box. It's good stuff, and I know I'm going to like it, but it'd be easier to pitch it if I knew what was in, what I'm going to get when I open the box here. Are we ready to talk a bit about
we
that?
can talk somewhat, part of what our intention was bringing back tonight was to further discussion, to get a sense. I know that in our last discussion, there was a lot of hesitancy on the parcel tax. And so just getting that feedback from you tonight, I think helps us know the direction that ultimately to go with the parcel tax. With the bond, really, again, we had a quick turnaround time. And so in that week's time, is there the interest to go into the bond? As we went back and reviewed our facility master plan and listened to the discussion and the feedbacks back, we know that security and safety would be those areas that we'd want to address on the bond. And that could include the fencing, that would include our infrastructure, really building into that technology. In April, if we recall, when MEMU did our long-term IT strategic plan and talked about the different elements of what we needed, which all falls under security. I think those would be those areas that we'd want to hit. We also know that we have a definitely need for a central kitchen. We are going to be feeding every one of our students. And so what we currently have is not going to be able to provide that support to our students. And we are going to struggle. So that would definitely be a need. I think the other pieces, as we look at our middle school sites and things that haven't happened to there, we have middle schools that range from 800 to a little over 1,000, and we don't have a facility at our middle schools that actually holds every one of our middle school students. We don't have an event center at every one of them. And that is something that I know that our community has said we'd like to have. And so some may see that as a want. I think that's a needed feature at our middle schools. And so, those would be the type of projects that we'd want to vet out and bring the cost back. but also, if there's some other areas that as a board that you think need to be identified. I think with the lower bond, we may not be able to go out and address everything at every campus, obviously, but we could certainly start to hit some of those real needs. A smaller one as we look at our schools throughout the entire district, they're all in need of paint. It's been the years we haven't been able to go in and just paint and do that facelift where it becomes that site. When we talk about connectedness to school and we think back to all the LCAP indicators that Allison and her team shared, so many of those really bond could reference, that connectedness to school, giving those areas that kids want to be in and enjoy, those open spaces. Those are the type of things that I think we could look at really with the bond as we go out.
All right, great, thank you. Thanks for that. Maybe just one other question, the point that Lori brought up. So, Mr. Scott, you talked about an information campaign. And so if there were some sort of opposition in the community, would you still recommend that? Or do you, in your experience, would that generally entail more of an advocacy type approach?
Well, it depends on the level of opposition.
Okay.
I think I can be fairly certain that you will get a argument against you. I think I know who will write the argument against you. but regardless, that's not an argument against you is not opposition. But if there's significant opposition, yes, then I think you have to recalibrate that. I did want to make just one other informational comment. I think I made it before, but just to be sure that the board knows, in order to put a parcel tax on the ballot, it requires a simple majority of the board. In order to put a GO bond on the ballot, it requires 4 votes out of 5.
Interesting. Thanks. I'm finished.
Okay, so how do we go? You want to have more discussion on this, or so today we are not making a decision, right? So for sure, right? So I thought we all are putting our thoughts here, and if any clarification needed from.
This is for discussion only. What our hope would be is that you do give some indication, which I think as we did the roundtable there, we do have a pretty strong indication as to the parcel tax, that there's not a majority support for a parcel tax. Sounds like the bond, there is a majority support, but still a lot of more discussion, I think, that needs to happen with the amount that in all likelihood, we would need to schedule another meeting in July that we come back with more of those specifics with the cost amount for those 2 different types of bonds.
So another question. So in terms of when we go out with a bond and the list of the projects, are there generally dollar amounts attached to them, or is it just here's a list of things we'll do, but not necessarily the
No,
amounts?
there are not dollar amounts attached.
Not dollars. So it's really just a list. Here are 5 things that are on there, kind of thing.
It would be more than 5, but
Well,
yes.
but some number, right? Okay, thank you. I certainly would be interested in, I think, for staff to come back with more information around the kinds of, I think you did a very good job, Superintendent Yalba, just maybe having that in a slide or something in a form that we might share with the community. That would help me a lot. And we do need to hear from the public of their comments, by the way.
Yeah, we are not gone there yet. I think I think
I'll
you.
hold for after public comment.
Okay.
I do have one more, but I'll hold for after public comment.
Okay, so can we open up for the public comment then? You're okay, right? Okay. Yes, please.
Yes. Tracy K, Ivan Kuznetsov, and Kent Chang, if you could please raise your hands. Tracy, go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, Tracy, we can hear you.
Hi, board members. Thank you so much for taking the time tonight. I had 2 things. First, I wanted to get a little bit more information on how exactly this bond is structured. What is the term? I was not able to find that anywhere on the Measure H website for, the past bond measure. How long are taxpayers going to be stuck with this bill? I find it crazy that it's so difficult to find this information. I think a lot of people are voting without having full information. I'd also like to know, how is the interest being paid? Who pays it? Is it the school, the taxpayers, the city, the cities that raise the bond? So who pays the interest? But the bottom line is, really, how long are people stuck with this bill? And then the second thing is, I actually take this whole issue of a bond measure extremely personally. I'm a resident in the Regnart community, and we You know, my family and I have, and my whole community has spent decades putting in money for bond measures to have our schools renovated and then subsequently sold. And to hear, you know, another board member, I believe it was Phyllis, saying in just maybe a half hour to an hour ago that we're still planning on closing more schools. You know, how can we ask taxpayers to put in more money to renovate and update facilities when we're planning on closing schools? That's like the ultimate flipping scheme. It's unacceptable. It's really deluding taxpayers into thinking that they're supporting schools when there are a separate set of plans for those same schools. Let's not take taxpayer money to renovate real estate that we're then going to sell. And I'm sorry, but you know, if we're going to take the angle of, you know, security in a bond measure, but security might cost 1 to 2% of that entire bond measure, we can't market a bond measure on 1 to 2% of its costs. That's just being deceptive and misleading to voters. So let's be honest about what the costs of this bond are going to go to. If they're going to go to renovate schools that we plan on selling, people should know about that. So that's just how I feel. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy.
Yvonne, go ahead.
Hello, good evening. Tonight, I want to address CUSD parents and the taxpayers in our community, especially the ones that chose to attend this dog and pony show instead of watching the Warriors game. Based on the conversation today, I have to admit that we are looking at another attempted money grab before November elections. Just like we heard from trustees Cunningham and Leon last week, if there is an opportunity to get money, take it. Fair enough. I just didn't expect to see the nerve to spin it as a safety and security issue. That's a new level of gaslighting. But at least we all agree that it's not and never been about the needs of our students. It's especially cynical as the new tax proposal comes at a time when we are looking at once in a generation kind of recession that will hit our parent community particularly hard. There are more ways to support education than voting for yet another tax measure. And there are more urgent problems in our schools than getting money from the public. CUSD property tax revenue keeps growing at a stable rate of about 4% a year. Combined with a strong decline in the number of students, we see a substantial increase in funding per student in our district. As we've seen last year, CUSD is perfectly capable of operating within its means. Teachers' salaries have been increased by 13%, even though Measure A failed last year. Unfortunately, it's also abundantly clear that we can no longer rely on the district to provide unbiased information. So if you care about education, please visit www.nocusdtax.org. That is www.nocusdtax.org to get the facts, join the mailing list and the next door group, to take an active position and coordinate with like-minded parents and members of our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Ivan.
Kent, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak.
Ken, we can't hear you. No, he's online here.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, is it clear? Or?
Hello?
Yeah, you can try, but it's not very clear, Ken. Can you try talking a little bit? Let's see. No, we can't hear you again. You want to go to the next person and then come back for Ken?
Yes.
Ken, we will come back to you.
The next group of speakers is Ajin, Valentin Rybov, and Sophie Yang. If you could please raise your hands. Ajin, go ahead.
Hi, I want to ask, I have a comment about Sylvia is talking about the other community, the other district, their community will support the parcel tax and they were happy to invest the education. Yes, they have a good school board members So they willing to spend money to invest, but CUSD, no, because we don't see, we don't feel comfortable to trust you guys again. Because yeah, you're closing school in a very, very rush time. And now this meeting, I feel like is a election strategy meeting. So I don't understand why we need to spend such big money to push the parcel tax and also pay for the consultant to working on that. Mr. Scott, I don't want to offend you, but I really concerned about, do you have kids in school? How old is your kid? Do you understand what school situation is? Are you in the CUSD school district? I don't think so. Oh, maybe you are. But anyway, your presentation made me feel like you draw a, overpaint the pictures, and I think it seems like I don't feel like you put your feet on our ground. And so, I don't think the parcel tax will pass. Plus, our community really against the parcel tax, especially for those family. Their schools are closed and they have to be pushed to the private school due to the late reopening. And also, we concerned about, if we pass the parcel tax, we don't know where the money will really spend on it. We really thought about that because, a lot of things, even though you can say, put a list that you can do that. But now the gas fees is going high. A lot of people, they lost job, and the life expense, cost in Cupertino is going high. So do you think people want to pay for that without, a neighborhood school? And also due to the school closure, a lot of family, they have to hire the driver or pay more gas to send their kid, drive their kids stuck in the traffic, send their little kids to the school. So I don't think people will support the parcel tax, also the bond, because you lost the trust of our community.
Thanks, Adrian.
Valentin, go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear Valentin.
Wonderful. So many things in so little time, like 3 minutes. So Sylvia made some interesting comments about shift in enrollment. Is this what you call, is this a new euphemism for free fall in enrollment? And you get the dubious credit for that. You drove it down at this beyond accelerated rates so that you can enjoy the benefits. You're still getting the parcel tax and I'm sorry, not parcel tax, property tax. What am I saying? But you have a lot less students. So per student, you get a lot more money and the property tax keeps climbing. The property values are insane and through the roof. Then there's another comment that Sylvia made, given the community a chance to decide. The community did decide in 2020. The community did decide in 2021. That was a resounding no. And I think you're finally starting to catch up on the rhetoric, so to speak, that another parcel tax attempt will fail. And Phyllis was absolutely correct. The more you fail, the more likely you are to fail. And you've already failed twice at parcel tax. So I think the writing is on the wall and the community has decided. I can almost applaud your audacity of trying to spin the bond as a safety measure. But in your own documents, you say 3 years ago, you've identified fencing. It doesn't get any more simple than that, fencing. And in 3 years, you've closed it at what, 1 or 2 schools? The parents realize that anyone right now can stroll on virtually any school property unobstructed. And, if we can debate crime all along, but it doesn't take much for a sexual predator to just walk into school grounds. I mean, stop talking about guns. Anyone can do it, and you haven't done anything in 3 years, and you're asking for bond money right now for the sake of safety? That's a sick joke. And then again, Phyllis talked about closing more schools, about 624 time mark. So you're asking for more money from the parents, from the community, and you're going to close more schools. I mean, it doesn't get any more sick and sinister than this. And I'm almost out of 3 minutes and I can talk for a lot more. Thanks and bye.
Thanks, Valentin.
The last, excuse me, the last speaker is San R. If you could please raise your hand. Go ahead.
Yes, hello. There's 3 great decisions you could make tonight. The first would be to fire the consultant while you're on this call right now. The second would be to resign as board members, at least 3 of you. And the third would actually be a different ballot measure, which is a ballot measure to put term limits on this board so that you don't make these kinds of decisions. Let's talk about why. If this consultant was worth the money paid, he would have listened to past board meetings. He would have listened to the angst from the community on the lockdowns that you did. He would have explained to you why there was a 10% decline in enrollment in 2020-21, unlike the past 10 years before that. He would have explained to you that this community has lost parents as a demographic. He would have explained to you that homes are 4 to 6 million now, and parents can't afford 4 to 6 million, and families have stopped going in. He would have explained to you that apartments and renters no longer need to rent here because in this tech-heavy community, they can work from anywhere as companies now have freed up the need to return to office. He would have explained to you that in this community, with inflation and gas prices where they are and a recession around the corner, there is no room for more taxes. Instead, he talks about things like Republican vote base. What has that got to do with any of this? The best consultant you could have hired was Jerry. Jerry probably deserves the money that you're giving the consultant. You could have saved yourself some money and paid Jerry a stipend for the wisdom he gave you in just 2 short minutes. It doesn't take a consultant to give you common sense. It takes being connected to the community. It takes walking around schools during drop-off and pickup. I never see any of you at any of the schools. Perhaps you should come out and volunteer as a crossing guard. Perhaps you should come out and talk to the community to understand the community. How many of the community parents are even eligible voters? Do you understand the disconnect between the voting base of this district versus those that are actually eligible voters and are parents? You have lost all touch of awareness with the district as a voting body and the set of parents, their demographics, their voting abilities. And let me say one final thing. The amount of time you spend talking about kids' agendas today, you haven't talked about on a board meeting agenda for the last 3 years. So think about that. Try to talk about kids' agendas with normal and spend the same amount of time on kids' agendas.
Thanks, Santosh. Anyone?
That was the final speaker.
Okay, thank you. So,
What about the speaker that we couldn't hear? Do we want?
oh, okay.
that?
Can you call, is Ken there?
Ken, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Again, same, Ken, we can't hear you. Ken, we are not hearing you.
Hello? Hello?
Go ahead and try. No, same. I don't know whether you can hear us, but we can't hear you.
Maybe he could email us.
Yeah,
his
can
comments.
you please send us an email, your thoughts and the comments? That'd be better because we can't hear you. Your audio is bad. Thank you. I think these are the comment cards what we have, right?
Yes,
I still see that people lifting their hand, but
I do not see comment cards for
okay.
that name.
Thank you. Then I think let's come back to the board again because we are not concluded. Anything more you want to add, comment or?
I think for me, really just reiterating my request to get more details on what a bond, what are some of the projects that might be in a bond measure. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.
I second that. I went back to the FMP, so I would assume that's your starting place. So I guess I'd like to see what would be in both the bond amount and if there's a place, a column or something where you could call out.
Can you please?
Oh, I did it again.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll start over. So I would request that we could see a project list at both dollar amounts so that we know what we'd be getting at each one. I started at the FMP, so it would be great if we could see some sort of column of what we had prior discussed at some length as part of the FMP process versus anything that's, I don't want to say new because I don't think anything you've talked about so far is new so much as it's maybe beyond or has been added to because of more specific needs or assessments since the FMP process, which I think, did we finish that pre-pandemic maybe even? Yeah. So it's been a couple of years. So anyway, so it would be good to know sort of what's risen after the FMP process versus what was inside the scope of the FMP. That's it. Thank you.
Plus one, getting both what the larger one, what the smaller one is, and then also comparison with the original facilities master plan.
Plus one.
Yeah, same then. I don't think I have more. So let's this may call for us to have we can talk during the agenda setting. This may call for one more meeting additional then.
Yeah, so thought maybe Chris could talk a little bit about the timeline, just because, you know, we have mentioned we have that August 12th would be the impending date, but our next scheduled board meeting isn't until July 28th.
Yeah, thank you, Stacey. So as I'm understanding what the board is asking us to do, so for us to come back and have the board have an opportunity to review the project list and further understand all that. And then at some point in time would be, if the board wants to give us direction to continue to go forward, we would be bringing to you a draft of the resolution that codifies the ballot language and all that. So it's possible that we might have to meet 2 times sometime before July 28th, and then maybe take action on July 28th as our last meeting to decide whether or not the board wants us to move forward or not. So I would maybe suggest that we look for a date between now and July 28th to come back with you with the project list.
You said we need 2 dates?
Well, I think just in support of what the board is typically what the board wants to do is to take a look at the language of the resolution and maybe over a period of 2 meetings. And so one meeting we already have on the calendar, July 28th, but we do need that meeting prior to if we want to continue with the 2 meeting.
Chris, are you thinking later in July to give yourself some more time?
I mean, we've started the conversation with our bond attorneys, so I can't imagine it's going to take several weeks to be able to come back to you with a project list and some draft language as far as the resolution goes. But I'll just defer to the superintendent. I mean, I don't know if there's I don't know what everyone's schedule is, to be honest with you. So I'll just defer to Stacey.
I think if we looked at calendars, I know many of you had indicated you may be on vacations during the July time. And if we looked at the week of July 18th, if there's any possibility, perhaps that July 19th or July 20th.
21st would work for me. Actually, any day that week.
The 21st, I'm not available.
18th, 19th, and 20th all work for me.
Yeah, not necessarily it has to be on a Thursday, so we are okay. It's a special board meeting.
Correct.
So
It could
we
be on
can,
any day. of the
yeah,
week.
any day is fine with when most of you are available.
Doesn't have to start at 6 o'clock. It's a special board
And it
meeting,
can
so
be,
5 o'clock.
it can be a Zoom meeting also if somebody is traveling.
Pardon me?
If somebody is traveling,
They could zoom in.
okay, so that's also a flexibility here.
Mhm.
So in case you're out of
I
town,
think we have to have a majority in person though, don't we?
We
Don't we have to have, am I
no, because you'd be
misremembering that after all the
You're still going to
changes?
be voting it. Well, we're not voting at that time. It's a special meeting, so there is no action taken at that one.
Okay, so it's the action that drives it. Okay.
yeah, so should we decide a date now or should we
Do
be?
an agenda setting maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that, but I think tentatively the week of 18th, right? So that could be one for a thought, yeah.
It would be helpful for me if we could set the date tonight.
Yeah, I think
whether
we
it's
can do
now or
that.
During agenda
Let's come back
setting.
on the
Back in
date.
agenda
But
setting.
I think at least we are concluding this discussion by saying that we are going to have a special meeting before 26th.
Yeah. And if I can, just for clarification, we'll be bringing back the information on the bond at the 2 different amounts with specifics, and we are taking parcel tax off the table.
Okay. Okay, good then. Thank you, everybody. Let's move on to the next one. Where are we? Okay, so 7-11 committee discussion action. Who's going to? Is it?
Thank you. Staff doesn't have any formal presentation tonight. We wanted to bring this topic back to the board. We had presented to you and we had Richard Lowenthal, our illustrious chairperson at our last meeting. And so tonight we're bringing back the final report and a recommendation to approve and accept the report in the form of a resolution. Then just for the board's information going forward, should the board surplus these sites, then we will be bringing forward to you some additional information in terms of the next steps as far as how we're going to consider looking at options for the uses of those sites. I mentioned at our last meeting that I will bring in Terra Realty and have a much larger conversation as well in terms of all of our sites, so that we can kind of have this broader conversation so that we can go forward with that. So really nothing more to add tonight other than if the board has any questions in regards to the actual report.
Okay. Since this is a discussion / action, we can have a discussion first before any motion then, since it's not just an action. So you want to go, any discussion needed?
I'll just like to thank Mr. Lowenthal for joining us here tonight. Unless the recommendations have changed since last week, I'm happy with them and I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. How about yours?
I'll plus one that, and I'll just ask staff to reiterate that we are, that we have to move forward with surplusing in order to then move forward with leasing for educational purposes for our sites that we are keeping in reserve. And the only one that we are considering doing anything otherwise with is Montebello.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Yeah, anything, Sylvia?
No additional questions.
Thank you.
Just like to echo my thanks to Richard for helping us out with this. And I'm happy to make a motion to accept the recommendation.
Okay, so for me too, same, nothing on this. So one question to Chris is like, let's say in the event of we approving this, what's the next step here? Would you be giving a periodic update on this, or what frequency we get an update on the actions, like,
As I mentioned, as I was mentioning earlier, staff will come back with more of a detailed plan as far as the next several steps. As you can understand, there's a couple moving pieces here. In regards to Montebello, should we look for a suitable purchaser or an exchange, we will be involving our real estate consultant. In regards to either the use of Meyerholtz or Regnart, we would probably first come back and have the conversation with the board about the prospects of possibly using one or the other site for the district office location as a topic to discuss. And that would then kind of trigger what we do then with the various leasing options. For the purposes of leasing, we would be coming back to you with the plans to solicit for proposals because we do have quite a few parties that are interested. We would want to make sure that we be as transparent as possible there to open up a process for which we can get all of these prospective prospects and properly vet who will be then the best choice for our district. So the details will come at the next time. Like I said, right now as I said, we're just kind of just getting into the moving out of the campuses. I would suspect that we would come back in September, maybe at the latest, as far as the next steps.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Point of order. I think you need a second for the motion before we ask questions.
Did we get a motion?
Phyllis had made a motion.
Yeah, but I thought that we will take a public comment and things so that this is not, we are not
Well,
ready to
then
vote, right? Yeah.
Well, do I need to withdraw the motion then? Because there's no second.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, okay, yeah, okay. So I thought that it was not a question. I thought it's a discussion item. So what is the next step I asked? That's it. Okay, that's fine. Then I think we are not going to take the vote yet, right? So we will go to the public comment if any. Yeah.
There are no public
Okay,
comments on
good.
this
Then,
item.
yeah, then let's do any more.
No, I'd like to make a comment if I may.
Yes, please.
It's working. Okay, good. I just want to thank you for trusting the committee to do this work. We were honored to be selected, and it's our pleasure to work for the district as you do all the time. And I have to say, I just want to make a comment out of turn here that it's a pleasure to watch how well the board and your staff work together here. It's not happening everywhere, but it's really good to see a well-functioning organization like the one you're running. So thanks for letting me be involved.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Any more comments? Otherwise, we can go for a voting. Okay, can you please do a roll call vote?
Trustee Lu,
Aye.
trustee Cunningham,
Aye.
trustee Vogel,
Aye.
trustee Leon,
Aye.
trustee Madhato,
Aye. Okay, so that's good. Thank you. Next one is board policy 11.2.
All right, thank you. So this information is a follow-up to our meeting last time. Staff had made some recommendations to revise board policy 3100. Since our last board meeting, the board had asked staff to do a little bit further research into seeing what other of our local basic aid districts are doing as far as their board policies. And so upon review, none of the other basic aid districts had any additional language, I would say, that provided some further instructions as far as how to deal with the inflationary impacts of the budget. All of them either had a fixed percentage rate. A couple of them had a reserve amount as high as 12%. I think one had 15%. I didn't know, and we didn't make a recommendation to refer to this reserve. In the past, we've always referred to our reserve as a board reserve. I'd like to recommend that we now reference this as the board's basic aid reserve, so that people clearly understand the purposes of this reserve. It's because of the basic aid nature and the status we would be in. So I'll stop and entertain any questions.
Thanks, Chris. Jerry.
Is just following up on this term basic aid reserve. Is this like an industry standard term, or is this a term we're using ourselves?
Well, I mean, I didn't create this one. I mean, this is kind of what the other school districts.
But this is what they're calling it.
Correct. And it's up to our board to if you want to define it in such a way.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. That's it. Thanks. Satish.
No, I don't have any additional questions. Thank you, Chris, for the updates.
Okay. Brilliant.
No additional questions.
Thank you.
No questions. Thanks, Chris.
No question from my angle side also. So any public comment here?
No, they're not.
Okay, so can we have a motion then?
I'll move board policy 3100 for the budget, updated 11.18.14.
Thanks, Lori. Can we have second, please?
I'll second.
Thanks, Phyllis. Can we have a?
Trustee Lou,
Aye.
trustee Cunningham,
Aye.
trustee Vogel,
Aye.
trustee Leong,
Aye.
trustee Madhato,
Aye. Okay. Move to the action items, 12.1, LCAP. Any presentation here going to be? It's done, right? So, okay.
No presentation, just bringing it back up.
Yeah, that's fine. I just making sure. Okay, then can we have a motion in the table if any discussion is needed before?
I move.
Thanks, Phyllis.
I'll second, and with my thanks to Ed Services and your entire team.
Thanks, Laurie. Any discussion needed before we go? There's an action item. Okay. Any public comment?
no, they're not.
Okay, can we have a roll call?
Trustee Lou,
Aye.
trustee Cunningham,
Aye.
trustee Vogel,
Aye.
trustee Leong,
Aye.
trustee Madhato,
Aye. Thank you. Next, the LCAP addendum. This also I think last time we discussed, but anything, no other new updates or anything, right? So can we have a motion here on the table?
So moved.
Thanks, Jerry.
I can second.
Thanks, Sylvia. Any discussion? Any public comments?
no, there are not.
Okay, can we have a roll call?
Yes, trustee Lou,
Aye.
trustee Cunningham,
Aye.
trustee Vogel,
Aye.
trustee Leong,
Aye.
trustee Madhato,
Aye. Thank you. The last one on the action is fiscal budget adoption. Chris,
No comments other than I do want to take this opportunity to get on the record that I'd like to thank the staff, specifically our Director of Fiscal Services, Tumai Vong. They all did a yeoman's job in getting the budget together and the amount of time we had. So I just want to just get that on the record. So the budget is as presented at our last meeting, just a few little minor adjustments to meet some of the state requirements, but essentially it's the same budget as we presented to you at our last meeting.
thanks, Chris. Can we have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Lori. Any second, please? Thanks, Phyllis. Any discussion needed? Any comments?
I'll just throw out that thank you for raising your staff, and also thank you to you, Chris. I know this is the end of our fiscal year, our budget year. Such an extraordinary amount has been asked of the budgeting teams over the last couple of years, with all of the new layers of oversight and reporting, in addition to all of the different funds that we now have to track and report out. So thank you so much for this. And then also such an extraordinary year to be moving into basic aid and planning for how we do that. So thank you to you and your team.
Thanks, Lori. Do we have any public comment?
No, we do not.
Okay, thank you. Then can we have a roll call?
Yes, trustee Lou,
Aye.
trustee Cunningham,
Aye.
trustee Vogel,
Aye.
trustee Leong, trustee Madhato,
Aye. Okay, so the next one is board activity. Reports, committee reports.
I have no updates.
No.
Okay, good. We have only a week now, right, since last.
I have nothing.
Same here. Okay, we'll go to the agenda setting. Then let's talk about the next meeting date. There's a special board meeting, and yeah, flexible in terms of which day.
I'm totally flexible. You guys decide what works.
Yeah,
for you
yeah.
and I'll do it.
I think I heard 18, 19, 20 raised earlier, and those would all work for me, but
Yeah.
21, 22 get a little harder.
Okay, then that's fine. So anyone has a problem with 18, 19, 20?
They're all fine for me.
Okay for me.
Okay, so let's do in the evening again. Like let's not instead of
Would you like a 5 o'clock start?
yeah,
time?
that's fine. So because we all work in the daytime.
Can I ask a quick question? Chris had mentioned we might need as many as 2 in addition to the one at the end of July. Is that right? Or are you talking about 1 plus end
One
of
in
July?
addition.
One extra meeting, top of what we already have.
Oh,
so
okay.
a total of 2.
We-
Okay.
Even I
perfect.
thought
Thank you.
it was,
Yeah,
yeah. Okay, that's fine. So 18, 19, 20, then we are okay at 5 o'clock. Which day is good then? Let's pick up.
Let's go for July 20th, the Wednesday at 5 o'clock. If that works
Okay,
for everyone.
July 20th, Wednesday.
You'll get us a calendar.
I'll get you a calendar invite. Yes.
Okay.
Do that. Thank you. Other EC members may not be available to join us as several of them are on vacation, but it's okay.
Chris, you're okay, right? Yeah. Okay, so then I think we'll go with the 20th at 5 p.m. on July 20th, special board meeting. Okay. Any other agenda items?
I have a couple of maybe information requests. So following up on some of the SEIU member comments today, one around, and I've actually heard from SIU members before in the past about just the policies around. It seems like some folks take cars or trucks home, and I just like to understand what are policies and practices around that. What are the sort of so I'd like to get some information on that. And then I think some of the, I guess, information around some of the comments tonight about reclassification, if we could get, I guess, Friday updates or however, like a little bit more context around some of the comments that were brought up today. So not really a meeting request, but maybe information request for both of those. Thank you.
Yeah, information requests can be anytime next year. Several of the trustees and other local districts who are basic aid have brought up, I guess there is a specific organization that basic aid districts belong to. That's some sort of consortium. I think it's like SF cubed or something like that. So I think it's like Schools for Sound Finance, something or other, but I guess several of our local basic aid districts all belong to it. So I guess if we could get at some point, some sort of information about what that is and if we should be joining, and if so, what that all entails. Thanks, Chris.
Anything, Sylvia, anything, fellas?
I do. Now that we're past COVID, I would like to see us bring back school presentations. We
Absolutely.
used to have school presentations and I love those, and I'd like to see those come back now that we're doing things in person.
Since you brought up a similar thing also, so we were talking about like, having comments in person also, right? So when are we planning to start having that complete transition into?
Yeah,
We're
so
currently
this
it's a
was
hybrid.
this was our year of change as we shifted throughout the pandemic. And so when we return in July, we will go back to our prior process where we would invite people to come in person. Comments will only be taken in person, although we do know that we do have a lot of our families that join us and watch. So we would continue to stream the board meeting. But if you wish to make a public comment, you would need to be in person.
Or over email.
Or over email.
Or over email. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Then if not anymore, then I can adjourn the meeting. Okay.